Welcome to another session of Inside Outlooks, where we know that personal growth is an inside job. How we think, what we think, and why we think it are what determines our level of success and happiness. It's time to take a look inside to change the world around us. I don't think you have imposter syndrome, do you? When it comes to that?
Occasionally, on occasion, for sure. Yeah. Mostly because Oh, next.
You want to go impersonating yourself?
A little bit of imposter syndrome and a little bit of like, what is my identity? Like, what do I hold my identity in? Because also, like, you like very quickly we're like, oh, we'll talk about like your team leader role. So it's like, okay, well, is that what I am? Like, is that my, or is that my value? Right? Because I'm also a business owner, and I'm also a real estate investor, and I'm also a party thrower.
Well, I think the question becomes, what's the bio for, right? Without getting too prescription on it, because I've had issues with this too, thinking like, I feel like I'm boasting, but the idea of a bio is to boast on some level. It's to be factual on some level. It's a mini resume.
Mm-hmm.
I think Matt nailed my long bio, not the short one. The short one is perfect for the podcast. He nailed my long bio in a sense that that's the bio I've been wanting for years. I just kept missing the mark. Now, it was good enough for what it was for. Like, someone asked for a bio and I would give it. Right? It was good enough, but it always fell flat in my head when I read it. So I think, to Matt's point, it helps to take stock of who you are. It's about awareness and mindfulness, and also being vulnerable.
And how you want to be perceived in the world. Because I think that we're all egomaniacs, right? Like everyone wants to be perceived in a certain way, whether they willingly like acknowledge and accept that, or it's just a subconscious kind of thing. And sometimes it like shows up in your life in this like, oh, when you're deciding like what to wear for a big event, right? You're thinking about how you want to be perceived at that event, right? In that moment, or you're writing a bio for something. But like on a more subconscious level, every single day, every time you get dressed, every time you greet someone, all of those things are how you're being perceived in the world.
Just in your example of getting dressed up for an event, that's hyper aware how you want to be perceived and what your wardrobe says about you. So you're thinking about it, right? And to an extent, you're being vulnerable. However, you're kind of being vulnerable in a vacuum inside your head, because the question becomes, are you trying to be something you're not, or are you comfortable with who you are and your dress is going to complement that or accentuate that, right? As opposed to being someone you're not and
Something you think others want you to be.
Yes, right? Which it works so much better when when you dress for the event, whether it's formal or casual, but you do it in such a way that your personality comes out. The same thing with same thing with the bio. I was on a call. This occurs to me. I don't know why. I'm just going to say it. I was on a call today before you guys. That was a sales call. They were selling me on why Realty Solutions should advertise in, of all things, what's your magazine?
Real Producers.
That's it. Why I should advertise in Real Producers in this area. And by the way, I think I want to connect you with this guy. Cool. That owns the South Jersey franchise. So he doesn't know me. He's actually very young. He's new to the industry. He is just an entrepreneur. So he's new to everything. So he's been doing it for about 1.5 2 years. And he's already sold to all the people that I know, right? Colleagues, some are friends, some are business partners.
Mm-hmm.
But he doesn't necessarily know that.
Right.
And I was struggling with, do I need him to know that? Is that my ego that I want to name drop?
Mm-hmm.
So I held off from the most part, but there was a couple weak moments where I couldn't hold it in. And I started to pontificate about who I knew and why. But I'm not sure if it was like, my fear is that it was disingenuous. I'm not sure that it truly was, because my intention was to bring it back so that he could see what kind of business man I was and how the business relates to, the 500 agents that he's selling to in this area. So for me, I sometimes feel a little bit shame and guilt, although my ego won't stop it, to name drop.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why that occurred to me when I heard you talking about the topic.
No, that's an interesting perspective because I've done that, or I don't know if you guys have, where you've left a conversation with someone and you think, why did I say that? why did I do that? Right? Like, why? I used to get, then you get frustrated and you're like, oh, now I feel like icky about it. But I think that there's something positive about that reflection, because that's telling you that you're actually taking a look at your ego. And like you said, you went into that meeting, it sounds like, consciously, maybe not trying to suppress, but just to be aware, right,
Mhm.
of what
Yeah.
you were doing. Like if it was
Well,
all,
maybe I was going to it from a suppression standpoint, and that's why it felt so hard to keep it in. Right. So
Mhm.
maybe I approached it from that standpoint of a negative. So thinking it as a negative, I shouldn't do this. And then I bottled it up so much that it actually was the right thing to do in the whole setting, because the conversation after an hour ended up being from him saying, and I'm pretty sure it was genuine, this was one of the most refreshing calls that I've had with people in the industry, because they just don't get advertising, marketing, networking, and promotions. That left me feeling like, well, I'm glad I did get deeper into the conversation and who I know and why I know them. I don't know. That could just be a total masturbation rationalization.
No, I don't think that it is, because, well, let's look at it this way. Who, when you think of like people that people like, a term they use a lot of times is like they're down to earth, or like they're always themselves, right?
Yeah.
So it sounds like you, instead of like suppressing that, you just decided to be yourself, and
Yeah.
that's why he knew that it came off as genuine. But okay, it comes back to, let's talk about identity. You were meeting someone who was a stranger, right,
Mhm.
to you. And the question was like, how do I frame myself to this person who doesn't seem to know that he knows people I know, right? That doesn't seem to know my position or who I am.
Yeah.
Uh,
So a side of it is ego, and another side of it is, I think my real intention, if you boil it down, was to maximize the 45 minutes to 50 minutes I spent with him, because I wanted as much information as I possibly could, so that he knew who I was, and give information, so that if I chose to spend money with the magazine, I had more of a partner than just a sales rep.
mhm.
Again, maybe that's a rationalization.
I checked out for a minute because I was hyper focused on trying to find your bio, but I remembered that we recorded that call, right? So I can get it from the call. Anyway, sorry, it's bothering me because I found another bio that I did write for you a while back because you asked me to do that, and I was like, oh, that's a little
Oh, you've done it
familiar.
twice?
Anyway, but
Wait.
here's what I will say, because Daryn and I both know we're very much alike, and so I'm going to go back to the beginning of this conversation about walking away from a conversation going, why did I say that, right? Like, and I used to beat myself up about that, and I don't anymore, and the reason is because I am who I am, and I don't really give a shit anymore, right? And it used to be, well, what are they going to think of me? Well, I don't really care, because I am who I am. I'm not going to
Yeah.
change who I am for them, so I'm okay being who I am and walking away from it that way, and I'm just an open book, and I know that. And I lived with somebody for a lot of years who, anytime I would share stuff, or I would come home and I would say, I was talking to someone, you really should be more careful. Like, didn't trust, right? That you can't trust people, right? Well, I trust people until they prove me wrong. I'm the opposite, right? I'm not going to go and worry about it. So I just am who I am, and I'm open. Do I think that always serves me? No, because I say yes too much, right? But anyway,
You say yes too much.
yeah,
What does
no,
that mean?
I say no to people. If they need something, I say, sure, I can do that, right? Whether I really think I can or not, right? It's just me. I'm getting better at that too. But, but I mean, that's coming from, because we want to be liked, right? I mean, it's just part of our natural behavioral style for Daryn, right?
Yeah, it's a security thing. And I think the statement, I don't really give a shit anymore, we appreciate that. However, from a defining what that really means, what I'm hearing from you is I give a shit more about what I think of myself, and to be more aware of being as much 100% me as I can be in every situation. But then, to Daryn's point, every situation does, I think every situation does demand possibly a different version, not different version of us, but a different role of us. We're still the same person, but if you're going to go to that large scale formal event, you're going to be dressed on that behavior. If you're going to go to a barbecue, you're going to be dressed in on that behavior. The same thing with a sales call. You're the salesperson, or you're being sold.
It's
right?
very similar to what you and I were talking about last week around vulnerability, right? It's good to be vulnerable because people see you as human, like whatever. But in certain situations, you can't go up and, if you're a leader and you're leading a talk on, I don't know, whatever, self-confidence or whatever, you can't go up there and throw yourself under the bus about how you lack self-confidence so much, right? Like, or whatever. So you can be authentic, but yeah, it's got to be, you got to dress your mind, your mindset, your demeanor to the client, to the person, to the situation, to the whatever, right? Just like I wouldn't wear an Armani suit to go show well, I can't even find a $200,000 property now, but a mobile home out in Ridgeland, right? And I wouldn't go in flip-flops and a t-shirt to show a $3 million property on the island. I wouldn't show up at a barbecue with Matt, who's all business, or Matt, who's all whatever, and I wouldn't show up at a business meeting talking about, I don't know, Disney World.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening, and remember, your outside world is an inside job. See you next time. Hey, can we get some more over here?